When the Israelis first attacked Iran, the Americans, including Donald Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, were very eager rhetorically to distance themselves from it, coming out that night and saying, this is a unilateral Israeli attack, the United States is not involved. Now, there was a lot of skepticism, including from me, about whether that could possibly be true. It was unimaginable that the Israelis, given their full-scale dependence and reliance on the United States for military support, financial support, diplomatic support, would possibly launch a major war of this kind without not only advising Donald Trump in advance, but getting his approval. After all, Trump had been pretending to restrain the Israelis. He publicly was telling them as late as that day that he doesn't want them to attack Iran because that would sabotage the diplomatic resolution that he still believed he could achieve. But it was inconceivable that the Israelis would just go and defy Trump and launch a war on their own. And increasingly every day it's become clearer and clearer through reporting, particularly through Donald Trump's own statements, that he not only knew about the war in advance, that he not only greenlit the war in advance, but that he ordered his administration to plan the war directly with Benjamin Netanyahu. And especially once he began to see that the war was perceived as a success, Trump began getting more and more explicit, more and more blatant about his view that the credit for this war goes first to him, that he's the one who's essentially the author of this war, the father of it, the person who's now presiding over it. And over the past 24 hours, Trump's posture has dramatically transformed in a way that I will confess I find genuinely alarming for reasons I'm about to show you. Donald Trump is not just talking any longer about America having participated in this war or supporting the Israeli effort. He's now talking about this war as though it is his, as though it is the United States' war that we started for noble ends and that he intends to conclude through what he is now calling unconditional surrender. And he's no longer even pretending what they were trying to feign just a few days ago, which is that the Israelis launched this war unilaterally. Donald Trump is now saying, this is our war. We're the ones who are dominating Iran. We're the ones who are beating Iran, and we won't even accept a ceasefire or negotiations of any kind. We want a complete end to this issue forever. And he presented all of those views, all of those proclamations, not in a address to the nation, though he does intend to give one. I'm not sure exactly when. But he did so instead in a series of tweets, or whatever they call postings on True Social, that he later then posted on X, and we want to just show you several of them. This was late last night after we concluded our show yesterday evening, where he said, America first means many great things, including the fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Make America great again. So that's pretty standard course for him, just supporting the Israeli war based on this utterly unproven premise that Iran was seeking nuclear weapons, something we've been being told for 30 to 40 years, only for it to always become disproven. And Trump now has just asserted, even though his own director of national security, Tulsi Gabbard, told the Senate 3 months ago that it wasn't true, that Iran suddenly decided that it was going to seek a nuclear weapon and was very close to getting one, and that's why this war was justified. He was asked on Air Force One last night by CNN's Caitlin Collins about Tulsi Gabbard's statement to the Senate that the consensus of the intelligence community was that, in fact, Iran was not seeking nuclear weapons. They had a nuclear energy program, as they've had one for many years, but that the Ayatollah had not authorized nor decided that the Iranians should pursue a nuclear weapon, that their posture with regard to nuclear weapons hasn't changed at all. And she asked him, this is not some random person inside the intelligence community. This is not some person who isn't loyal to you. This is the person you fought to get confirmed into this position by arguing that Tulsi Gabbard would clean up the intelligence community to make it reliable enough for you to depend upon when making decisions. She's the one that you picked. And she said the consensus of the intelligence community and the intelligence itself, which she's reviewed, is that Iran was not, in fact, pursuing nuclear weapons. And here's what he had to say when she asked him that.
You don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having one.
I got this one on you.
It was a little low, so let's just play this over. So here's Caitlin Collins asking him about Tulsi Gabbard's statement.
Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having one.
I got this one on you.
So he says, I don't care what she said. It's kind of a humiliating statement to make about the director of national intelligence that you chose. I don't care what she says. The whole reason she's there is to provide you with the intelligence. But obviously Trump is deeply vested in the idea that this is a noble war that he helped launch, that he has now ordered U.S. military assets to fight in. There are already U.S. military assets active in that region, intercepting ballistic missiles sent from Iran, both in the skies and other ways. And they're certainly active in providing intelligence and in planning the war. And now we're getting closer and closer to the moment where Trump is making very clear that he's now going to start giving the Israelis everything that they demanded, as American presidents typically do, in this case meaning the B-2 bombers that are uniquely large enough to carry the bunker busters that are needed to destroy Iran's premier enrichment facilities that are buried very deep underground. The Israelis can't do that on their own. And here was what Trump said this morning that I found to be the most significant, at least at that point of his pronouncement. He said this, quote, "We now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran." And obviously, to me at least, the key word there is we. We now have complete and total control over the skies over Iran. Now, unless Trump identifies as an Israeli or believes that Israel is a state in the United States, something that a lot of people do believe, they don't usually say that, but they do think that way, then we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran must mean that in Trump's mind, it's the United States military that's responsible for this war, that's fighting this war, that this is now an American war. We have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. He went on to say Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured, quote, stuff. Nobody does it better than the good old USA. So Israel is barely even mentioned in this framework any longer in Trump's mind. This is a war between the United States and Iran. He's giving credit to the Iranians for saying you have a lot of good sky trackers and air defense systems, but we don't care because it's no match for our technology. He's not even mentioning Israel anymore. It's just absorbed into Donald Trump's mind that this is his war, the war that he planned, that he plotted. And to the extent that he perceives it to be a success, which he clearly does, he wants full credit for it, not even supporting or partial credit for it. Here's Trump issuing another tweet or whatever, another truth on Truth Social. He says, quote, "We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but is safe there. We're not going to take him out, kill, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So he's saying we know exactly where Iran's leader is, and we're going to let him live. And I feel like this kind of language, we're going to let you live for now. We're not going to kill you for now. But if you shoot at any American asset, any American base in the region, which the Iranians have made quite clear they don't intend to do unless the United States attacks and bombs Iran directly. And obviously, if the United States attacks and bombs Iran directly, you have to expect that Iran's going to attack back, just like they're doing with Israel. I keep hearing these American media people talking about these ballistic missiles sent from Iran as though there's some sort of like aberrational, shockingly immoral, disproportionate response. Israel started the war. Unprovoked, they sent airplanes and missiles and bombs and had intelligence assets inside Iran shooting missiles and bombs, killing the military command, killing their families, killing whoever had the misfortune of living in those buildings, killing all sorts of civilians. Of course, Iran is going to shoot back at Israel with whatever they have. Any country would. And the same is true for U.S. involvement in the war. If the United States directly starts bombing Iran, as Donald Trump increasingly is hinting and suggesting that he intends to do, and all signs suggest is inevitable, of course Iran is going to then shoot at American bases and American service members and other American interests in the region. And then Donald Trump is saying, if you do that, we're going to murder the leader of Iran, which, if that's a war tactic, I guess it means you can bomb the White House, you can kill Netanyahu. Putin can kill Vladimir Zelensky by these standards. So this is Trump threatening Iran's leader directly, giving him orders, saying we're going to let you live. And that's why I say I think that there's a kind of power intoxication that has entered Trump's head. I don't mean to psychoanalyze him, but I've certainly never heard him speaking about war and destruction in these kinds of almost messianic terms. You know, like he's saying, you're going to sign the deal that we told you to sign. And he's basically now saying he's not interested in negotiations any longer. He only wants unconditional surrender. It's like a power kind of dynamic that is driving Trump. Remember, this is somebody who ran on a platform of saying he wants his legacy to be a peacemaker, that one of the worst and dumbest things the United States has done, one of the most self-destructive, is pursued wars in the Middle East, especially regime change wars, which this is quickly becoming. And now here he is just being pulled every day more and more into it. And he seems to be taking a lot of pleasure in it, like really enjoying this posture of like war leader. Perhaps of all the things that have been posted, and we're going to still show you some others, this might actually be the most disturbing. This wasn't written by Trump. This was written by Mike Huckabe, who is an end times evangelical, someone who believes, and that's why Trump made him U.S. ambassador to Israel, the first non-Jewish person to ever hold that position, that the United States has a biblical mandate to protect and support and strengthen Israel, that Israel has to be fully united and dominate and occupy and control all of the land under it, including the West Bank and Gaza. So that in Mike Huckabee's end times messianic religious view, that's when Jesus will come back and then consign everybody who's a non-believer, including all Jews, to hell unless they first repent and recognize Jesus as their savior. And that explains a lot of why there's so much support in the U.S. Congress for paying for Israel, for supporting Israel, for arming Israel. It's a religious belief. It's a theocratic belief that the Bible mandates that the U.S. government support Israel, strengthen Israel, protect Israel, even more so than it has to protect the United States, because this is not a nationalistic mandate, but a biblical one. And Mike Huckabee wrote Donald Trump a text that Trump, when he received, obviously was very moved by, believes in, wants the world to see, because Trump immediately, or I don't know if it was immediate, but quickly after, went and posted it himself on his Truth Social. And I think the text of this email is very important. It's from Mike Huckabee, a pastor, politician, ambassador, and great person. That's what Trump introduced him as. And here's the text, quote, "Mr. President, God spared you in Butler, Pennsylvania to be the most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. The decisions on your shoulders I would not want to be made by anyone else. You have many voices speaking to you, sir, but there is only one voice that matters, his voice. I am your appointed servant in this land and am available for you, but I do not try to get in your presence often because I trust your instincts. No president in my lifetime has been in a position like yours, not since Truman in 1945. I don't think anyone's confused about what Mike Huckabee means there. What was Harry Truman's consequential decision of 1945, what shaped history, what made him so consequential? Obviously, it was ending World War II by dropping 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. One in Nagasaki, one in Hiroshima. And that's obviously what Mike Huckabee is suggesting God wants Trump to do, or at least something very similar to it in this case. He goes on, quote, "I don't reach out to persuade you, only to encourage you. I believe you will hear from heaven, and that voice is far more important than mine or anyone else's. You sent me to Israel to be your eyes, ears, and voice, and to make sure our flag flies above our embassy. My job is to be the last one to leave. I will not abandon this post. Our flag will not come down. You did not seek this moment. The moment sought you. It is my honor to serve you." Mike Huckabee. Now, the tone of that text is really not the typical tone of an ambassador to the president. It is basically someone who believes that they are required to assume a supremely humble position because they're talking to a person chosen by God to carry out an extremely important task. And that important task is to force Iran into complete and total surrender, to no longer negotiate with them by using all force necessary to require them to do so. It's not a very vague or difficult to discern text. Its meaning is viscerally clear, immediately clear. And after receiving that email, Donald Trump began posting things like this that suggest that he, too, sees himself in this manner. Here's what he posted in the late morning or early afternoon in all capital letters, all uppercase letters, unconditional surrender, which of course that was the term used by Harry Truman and the British for what they were dictating to the Germans, what they were dictating to Japan. And the idea of using 2 nuclear weapons in Japan, according to Harry Truman, was the best way, the fastest way, the most effective way to ensure that the Japanese would agree to unconditional surrender, which is what they agreed to after those nuclear bombs were dropped. And history debates whether they were going to anyway, whether it was really necessary, but that was the history. That's clearly what Mike Huckabe is referencing. So we're clearly now in a position where we are dictating the terms of how this war ends. We're not even pretending any longer that this is Israel's war. Again, there's no mention by Trump as he talks about Netanyahu or what Israel wants. There's no pretense that they're in charge. This is Trump's war. And his posture, the way he's speaking, the way he's writing, everything suggests that he's very intoxicated by this role. Here he posted on Truth Social after that, quote, "I have now not reached out to Iran for, quote, peace talks in any way, shape, or form," responding to a news report suggesting that he did. "This is just more highly fabricated fake news. If they want to talk," meaning Iran, "they know how to reach me. They should have taken the deal that was on the table. It would have saved a lot of lives." Now, again, the deal that was on the table was one that everybody knew in advance that Iran could never and would never accept. And I think this is one of the points that has become most obscured deliberately, most obfuscated. Everybody always understood that Iran was going to have a program of enriching uranium and centrifuges because those are necessary to have a nuclear energy program. And the treaties and conventions that that Israel signed give Iran and every other country the absolute sovereign right to have a nuclear energy program, despite their commitment not to develop nuclear weapons. And the way that you do that is by ensuring that they're only enriching uranium up to a certain percentage, 3%, 4%, enough to enable them to have nuclear energy, but not go to 90%, which is where they could have breakout for nuclear weapons. And Steve Witkoff began the negotiations publicly on Fox by saying, and he was subject to a lot of attacks from this, for saying this, was that in the negotiations, of course, we're going to be open to having Iran maintain centrifuges and enrich uranium, because the idea is they can have an energy program but not a nuclear program. And at some point along the way, a nuclear weapons program, at some point along the way, that completely changed in Trump's mind to any attempt by Iran to demand the right of enrichment, something they've had forever, something they had in the Iran deal, something that international law accepts that they have the right to have. And that's why they could never give up the right to enrich, the right to nuclear energy, because it's a sovereign right that every country has, including them. It'd be a humiliation for them to give that up. On top of which, their view is we want to use nuclear energy to power our country so we can sell our oil to as much as possible, that we don't want to consume our oil, we want to sell it. And so when Trump says they should have taken the deal that I told them to take, he means a completely untenable deal for Iran, one that they could never and would have never accepted. And had that been clear from the start that Trump would have gotten to the point set up for him by Netanyahu and Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham, that a deal means dismantling the nuclear program, no enrichment whatsoever, there would have been no point in negotiating. Everybody would have known ahead of time this is going to go nowhere. But Witkoff said the opposite. Trump on Air Force One was also asked last night how he sees this war ending. In other words, is he willing to negotiate a ceasefire? Is he willing to go back to the negotiating table to try and get a deal with Iran? And I want you not only to pay attention to what he said in response to this question, but kind of the way he said it, the way he stood there and just spat out what you're about to hear.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here? An end. A real end, not a ceasefire. An end. So something that will be permanent. Or giving up entirely. Is that okay too? Are you close there? Is that possible? Is that possible next to you? Why not? Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible.
So they asked him, I don't know how well you could hear that, but the audio was clear. I think it was a little low. It's on an airplane and the like. But the reporter asked him, what is it that you're hoping Iran will do? Are you willing to sit down with them and negotiate a ceasefire? He said, not a ceasefire. I want an end, a permanent end. And he was very careful about specifying that he doesn't want some temporary solution that ends the killing. He wants Iran to give up. And that's what he then went on to say was, or just completely giving up. So we had two choices, sort of like a permanent end to this problem or a complete giving up, and then he went back to True Social, and that's when he started demanding we accept nothing less than unconditional surrender. Do you know that feeling when your coffee actually does what it's supposed to do? I'm not asking rhetorically, I want to know. Do you? Can you answer in the chat? Tell me. Do you actually know that feeling when coffee does what it's supposed to do? Tell me the answer. I'm asking. I'll tell you. It clears your head. It lifts your energy. It doesn't leave you crashing an hour later. That's what good coffee is supposed to feel like, and that's what you get with 1775 coffee. Their coffee, unlike others, is organic, single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. That means no toxins, no acidity, no jitters. Just smooth, clean coffee that fuels your day without weighing you down. From bold everyday roasts to brain-boosting mushroom blends and anti-aging formulas, 1775 has the functional and classic coffee options to match whatever mission you're on. Whole bean, ground, or pods. Your morning just got an upgrade. Head to 1775coffee.com and use promo code Glenn at checkout for 15% off your purchase. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.